Yeah, hi there. In this tutorial, we are going to cover object-oriented programming in Python. So, since we already have covered a couple of tutorials earlier, so this tutorial is basically kind of a recap or revision of what we have learned so far already. So let's start. We start with creating a class employee. This will serve as a base class. So later it will be used for the inheritance purpose also. Okay, in this class employee, we are first specifying the init method that is used to initialize the object of employee type. We are passing the first name, last name, and age, and based on this, the attributes first name, last name, and age of that object are initialized. Now we want another attribute called as email. So we are using the property decorator and creating this email method. So basically, because of this property decorator, it will act as an email attribute, just like first name, last name, age. It will act as another attribute of employee called as email. So what we are doing in this, we are just using the first name and last name, and based on that, we are creating the email and just concatenating at the company.com text to it. Similarly, we are creating another attribute full name using this property decorator, and full name is a combination of first name and last name. Okay, and we can use full name at the setter. So in full name at the setter, what we are doing, we will be pass if we want, we can pass a full name to an object, and using this space as a separator, it will extract the first name and the last name, and it will set the first name and last names accordingly. Now we have a string representation of the employee, which is under str and under repr. So str simply returns the full name of the object, and repr returns uh, the string representation like this. Like it will return like employee, and within the bracket it will return the first name, last name, and age. Now we are creating another class called as manager. This is a subclass, and it inherits from employee. So within this manager, we are again specifying the init method to start with. So it will initialize the first name, last name, and age of a manager using the super class, that is employees class init method. So we are calling super.init and passing to it first name, last name, and age, and it will initialize these three attributes. Now the fourth attribute, which is employee list, that represents the list of employees which are working under this manager, that is set directly using self.emp underscore list equals to emp list. Now length is a length dunder. What it does, it retains the number of employees who are working under the current manager. So it will find out the length, and it will just return that particular count. Add dunder method, it will for two given managers, it will find out the number of employees under each manager, and it will just simply add those numbers and return the total number. Total, there is a sum. That is, it will return the total number of employees who are working under two managers. Now get item, it what it does, it basically since employee list is a list under the manager. So if you want to extract a particular employee from that list, then for that purpose we have specified this get item under, in which we are passing an index, and from that self here represents the manager's employee list. It will return the value at that particular index. Now set item is used to set a given value at a particular index in a list. So using this set item dunder, we are passing an employee, and that employee, if not already exist in the manager's employee list, then that employee gets added that particular index in the manager's employee list. If that employee already exists, then we are just simply printing this message that employee already exists in the manager. Now we are creating one method, instance method called as add employee, in which we are passing EMP. So that EMP can be a single employee or it can be a list of employees. So what we are doing is first we are checking the instance of EMP. If it is a list, then we are extending the existing employees list by the parameter that by the attribute or by the argument that is received by this add employee. And it could be possible that there are certain employees which already exist under the manager's employee list, and those are also present in under EMP. So what we are doing here is we are just creating a set and then we are creating a list of it. So the idea is that within a manager's employee list we should not see any duplicate employees. So that's the whole idea behind doing this thing. Next is we are checking if it is not a list and if it is of the EMPs of is an instance of employee class, then we are checking if employee does not already exist in the manager's employee list, then just simply we are appending that employee that we are passing to the function to the method uh, to the manager's employee list. Else we are printing message that employee already exists in the manager. Now remove method in which we'll be giving and we'll be passing an employee. If that employee already exists in the manager's employee list, then we are removing it. Else we'll print the message saying that this employee does not exist in manager's list of employees. Now get employee list is to simply return the manager's employee list. Okay, so this much is done. Now we are going to create objects based on this. So let's say we are creating object E1, E2, E3 that represents employee E1, E2, E3. For simplicity purpose, I'm just creating the object name and their first name, last name as same so that we can easily track it. M1, M2 are the managers with the names M1 and M2. Now what we are doing is, and M1 is managing E1 and M2 is managing E2 and E3. Now first we want to display the thing. So what we are doing is we are just looping through a list of M, looping through a list in which we are passing M1 and M2. Now for each manager, we are printing the manager name using the string representation of the manager and the length of manager, which is returning the value based on the dunder len, which we have specified in manager. So that returns the number of employees that manager is managing. And for each employee who is in manager, we are printing the employee's name again using the string representation of the employee, that is a dunder str. So let's see what the output we get. So since manager M1 is managing E1, so we get like this. So here's a manager M1 within bracket. If you see one, it means that he has one employee under him. So that employee is E1. Similarly, manager M2 has two employees under him, and these are employees E2 and E3. Okay, now we are creating objects E4, E5, E6, and E7. Now let's say we try to add E1 to M1, even though E1 employee already exists in M1. Let's say we try to add the same employee again, and let's see what happens. So we are calling M1.add employee, and we are passing E1 to it. So first we are printing this message, adding E1 to M1. And if we try to add an employee which already exists in a manager's employee list, then we get message like this: E1 already exists in M1. So, and if we print M1 just to make sure that no duplicate entry has happened, we get only E1. So we don't see E1 twice. So it means that our code is taking care that there should be unique employees. There is no duplicate within a manager's employee list. Now we'll try to add E2 to M1. So we are adding E2 to M1. Now if we print M1's employee list, we get E1 and E2. Fine. Now we are trying to add a list of employees like E2, E4, E5 to M1. Now we are passing E2, E4, E5. Now if you see that E2 was already added and this E2 is also present in this list. So let's see what happens. Ideally, it should I mean, based on the logic that we have specified, it should not add E2 twice. It should only add E4 and E5. So let's see what happens. So first we are printing this message that adding E2, E4, and E5 to M1. Now after the addition, if we print the list of employees, we get E4, E1, E5, E2. So E1 and E2 were already there. Next employees that we are adding are E4 and E5. So if you see, E2 is not added twice. E2 is only present, it present only once. So it means we are maintaining this uniqueness within the uh, employee, within the manager's employee list. Now we can add, we have done the addition. Now we can remove an employee also. Let's see if we want to remove an employee E5 from M1. So we are printing removing E5 from M1. The E5 gets removed using M1 dot remove underscore EMP method, passing the employee E5. And after removing, if we print the manager M1's list, we get E1, E2, and E4. So E5 is removed. Now let's say we remove E2 from M1, then we can also remove again E2, then we get E1 and E4. Now, let's say if you want to print the managers and their corresponding employees' email IDs, we can again use the loop. So for M in M1 and M2, which is a list, we are printing m dot email. So using this email attribute that we had specified using the property decorator. And for each employee in manager M, we are printing the employee's email ID. So in the output, if you see M1 at the rate company.com is the manager's M1 employee, and he has a manager and he has two employees under him, E4 and E5. So E4 and E5, they have their email IDs. Similarly, manager M2 has two employees, E2 and E3. So in this way, we did a quick revision of what we have learned so far. That is the creation of a class, creation of init methods, property decorators, inheritance, uh, dunder methods. Uh, so in this way, this is what we have covered so far. We'll continue more in the next tutorial. Thank you.